If you've ever looked at a photograph of a German tank from the Second World War, you've probably noticed large numbers painted on the turret. Numbers like 312, 131, or sometimes just 2 digits. At first glance, they might look random or decorative, but they weren't. Those numbers told soldiers exactly who the tank belonged to, where it was sat in unit structure, and sometimes even a role it played on the battlefield. Once you understand them, you'll never look at wartime tank photos the same way again. German World War II units relied heavily on organisation, communication and structure. Tank crews needed to know who was leading, who was following, and where they fitted into the larger formation. Radios helped, but numbers painted directly onto the side of the tank were a simple visual way to identify vehicles quickly, even in the chaos of combat. And that's where the turret numbers come in. The most common system used by German armoured units were a 3-digit turret number system. Each digit had a meaning, so let's break it down. The first number tells you which company the tank belongs to. The number 1, first company, 2, second company, 3, third company, and so on. This instantly placed the tank in the larger battalion. The second number shows the platoon within that company. Number 1 was first platoon, number 2, second platoon, and 3, third platoon. This helped commanders understand how tanks were grouped tactically. And the third number identifies the individual tank within the platoon. So number 1 is the first tank, 2, second tank, 3 is third tank. Let's use this photograph as an example. This is a tank of 131 from Bovington Tank Museum, is where it now lives. So you've got the 1, which is the first company, 3 is the third platoon, the number 1, which is the first tank in that platoon. In other words, that number tells us a complete story about where the tank belongs. You might also notice some tanks with unusual numbers, like 00 or 01, or even 007. Not that 007 though. These were often command tanks. The command vehicles sometimes used the lower numbers, 00s, or distinctive markings. This made them easier to be identifiable by friendly units, though it also made them a priority target for the enemy. Because of this risk, some commanders later chose to remove all alter the markings altogether. Not every German unit followed the system perfectly. Sometimes you'll see 2 digits, 4 digits, or other markings that don't seem to fit into any pattern at all. Why? Because the system evolved during the war, like everything does. Units repainted the tanks out in the battlefields, replacement vehicles were also added into the fleets. And later war conditions often prioritise survival over regulation. Some tanks lost markings completely. Camouflage became more important than identification. These numbers weren't decoration, they were about organisation, communication and survival. All the noise and confusion of battle, knowing where a tank belonged could make the difference between a coordinated movement and chaos. They also remind us behind every number was a crew, the individuals working together under enormous pressure. Once you understand the turret numbers, historical photos start to reveal so much more. You're no longer just looking at a tank in a field somewhere. You're seeing a specific unit, a place within that formation, a moment frozen in time. Small details like this help bring history closer and more human. The next time you see a German tank marked with a number, take a moment to read it, because it isn't random, it's a code. One that tells us how the vehicle fits into the wider story of the war. History is often hidden in the small details, and that's where I think it's most powerful.